What we want to do here is demonstrate some of the fundamentals of object-oriented programming in C#. So what we've got here is a basic program.cs. So this is if you create a new console application. This is the hello world. There's nothing more than this program.cs, which creates the class program. And what we're going to do is create a couple of classes, and we'll expand this program by demonstrating the object-oriented concepts. So the very first thing that we want to do is create a class called person, and we're just going to give a very basic definition of the person class as defining someone's personality. So we're going to say that each person has a personality. So I just right click on my project here and go to add and new item, and up here at the top you can see class, and I'm going to create a person class. And notice that when we click add, the name of the file here is person.cs. That's going to be the same name as the class. And then the name of my project is OOP Introduction Explained, and that's the namespace that gets generated for each of the CS files in the project. Okay, so we've got this empty class. Each time you create a new class, you'll see here it says class, the name of class, and then no code underneath that. So all of our code is going to happen inside of this class. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to declare a field and to represent the personality. So this is going to store, and we're going to make this private string field. We're going to call it personality. And so the purpose of this field, it's declared at the top of the class, is to just store, as we move through this class, we're going to create some methods, and it's just going to store the personality so that we can retrieve that with our program.cs. So let's work on first creating a constructor. And our constructor is going to be the same name as the class. And so we often create methods that are either private, public, or protected. So in this case, if it's public, it's accessible by other classes within the same namespace. So we're going to initialize the personality field, and we're going to say that your personality right now is a mystery. Why not? Okay, so that's all we're going to do with the default constructor, nothing special. So the first thing let's do is let's create a method whereby when a user instantiates an object as a reference for person class, they can ask a question essentially to an object. So we're going to create this. It's not going to return anything. We're going to call it ask question, and we're going to say that it's going to accept a single argument that we're going to call answer, and I made it an integer type. And what I'm thinking is I'm going to have the program ask the user question, something like, if you are if you're an introvert, type 1 if you like to talk, which would sort of be someone that's an extrovert. Type 2 if you're you don't like to talk to others, you want to keep to yourself, so you're an introvert. So I'm just kind of trying to establish someone's personality, and so I'm just sort of thinking off the cuff here, something that may be kind of interesting. So what's going to happen is if the answer to the question that we haven't built yet is 1. Let's just say that their personality is an extrovert. So they like to talk to people. Okay, if the, or we could just say else. Their personality is an introvert. Okay, so we've got just a method here that is available in this class that asks a question. Nothing special. And so let's also create another method in this class where we actually get the personality. So let's say, this method returns the value of the personality. Okay, so let's call this, let's make this a public. It's going to return a string, and let's call it get personality, and it doesn't accept any arguments. Alright, so it's going to return personality. Okay, so we just want to demonstrate simple methods in our program. So I'm going to go back here to my program.cs, and let's get rid of this hello world business. That's the default that Visual Studio provides. Okay, so let's create a string that's going to receive input from the user, and let's go ahead and console.writeLine, and, or actually just console.write, so it just prints on a single line. And let's say type 1 if you like to let's say talk to others, and type 2 if you would like or let's say you would rather keep to yourself. Yeah, why not? Okay, so that's just a simple question, nothing special. Alright, so we want to get the input from the user, and that's where we do we assign this read line method that's available from the console, and we're going to store that in the input. Now we can go ahead and instantiate a reference to the object person that we just created. So I'll just call this my person, and it's going to equal to a new person. And right now it's not going to accept any arguments, it's just going to execute. So remember, when you instantiate an object right here of person, the default constructor is right here. So by default, the field is going to set a personality as a mystery. Okay, so what am I going to do next, I guess? Okay, so let's say my person dot ask question, and remember, ask question here receives an integer value as an argument. So I'm going to pass to the ask question. So notice that Visual Studio, when I hit period there, it found the method in the object. So I could hit tab there, and then I could pass a value to that, because here you see it says int answer, so it allows an integer variable to be passed. And so if I just type input, it's a problem, right, because it's a string. So what I've got to do is, in order to make this work, I've got to parse the string to an integer. So I would do something like int dot parse and then parse the integer value. Okay, so once I do that, what we can do is, why not write out, let's continue to use our person class and say console.writeLine right there, and say you are um, let's say, go right here. And let's just say we access our my person object, and then we can actually go here and say get personality. So now that the object, we've sort of set this field value to the input of what the user has provided. And so if they typed a number 1, then the personality would equal to extrovert. If they typed anything else like the number 2, they would be an introvert. And of course, if I wanted to, I could do a try catch here, just to make sure that we're not getting bogus input. And I'm not really going to do a lot of, for the purpose of this program, I don't think it's worthwhile to do a ton of troubleshooting, because I just want to demonstrate the object, right? So I'll just do a catch. But yeah, if they do give me super garbage, let's just say console dot write line, and I could just say, please enter an integer value or something. Like if they just give me some alpha character where it will not parse as an integer. So essentially, if they type a 1 and then any other number, even though I'm instructing them to type a 2, right now technically when you look at the person class, it's just testing 1 there. I could do something like, if else if, and I could say if the answer is equivalent to 2, then do that. And then else I could say personality, you are still a mystery. That way if they type the number 1, we get extrovert. If they type number 2, we get introvert. And if they type any other numerical value, you're still a mystery. We don't really know what you are. Okay, so I'm going to build this solution. And right now we're just going to run this solution. And it's going to ask the question, type 1 if you'd rather keep to yourself, type 1 if you talk to others, type 2 if you keep to yourself. So I'm just going to type 1, and then it says you're an extrovert, and then we exit the program. Okay, so there you can see that, let me just do this to kind of clean it up a little bit. So you can see that what happened there was it accessed the person object, and because the user typed 1, it assigned extrovert to the value of the personality. So we run that one more time, and this time we type 2, and then it says you are an introvert. We run it again, and we type some other number like 5, and then it says, well, you're still a mystery. Okay, so let's create another class, and this time what we'll do is we'll inherit from the person class, and we're going to create another class called student, and let's give it some functionality. So we're going to create a new item, and we're going to go class, and let's create student. Okay, and so just like when we created our person class, the very first thing is that it creates this empty class with no code in it, except this time what we're going to do is we're going to put that little colon there, and we're going to say person. So essentially what we're saying here is that student is a child of person. And so the advantage that we have to that is that all of the properties and methods, we really didn't set any properties for person. We're going to do that for student right now, so I can demonstrate, because a class typically has properties and methods. So in this case, though, what's important to note at this point is that if you instantiate a student object, it has access to not only the properties and methods of student, it also has access to properties and methods of person class. So what we're going to do here is we'll take a little bit different approach. I think here what we're going to do is in this class, we're going to create a class that here we can either write or read data to this class. Okay, so in order to read or write data, what we're going to do first is let's create a private field. These are also called backing fields. You'll see how I create a backing field by using the underscore, and it's going to hold any data assigned. What I'm thinking is we get the name of the student, and so essentially we're just going to get the name of the student and determine whether they are, what their personality type is. So we're going to create a field that holds any data that's assigned to a name property. So we're going to create a name property. Alright, and so the field we're going to create is going to be a string, and you see this little underscore name. This little underscore right here indicates that it is a backing field. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is create a public method that is the same name as the class, so that would be the default constructor. And we're going to put a little placeholder here that we're going to initialize the name field, the backing field, to nothing. Okay, so there's no name. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a name property, and then we're going to establish the get and set accessors. So the get accessor allows you to read data, while the set accessor allows you to write data to the class. So we'll call this the name property. All right, and so we're going to make it a public string property. We're going to call it name. And inside this, we're going to use the get accessor to read data from the class. And so we're just going to say get. And all it's going to do is return name. So if name is available in this class, it will return it, and that's how we read data from the class via this property. We're also going to have the set right here, the set accessor, and do the same thing. And so the value property, we're going to use what's called a value property here of the set accessor is automatically created by the compiler. And here's what we mean by that. Okay, so underscore name is equal to, and I can put this value property, and so the compiler, when you use this method, it will automatically write data to whatever value is passed to this property will automatically get written to underscore name. So this is automatically created by the compiler. So this is how we instantiate and use the student object with a property, and in this case right here, this is a property called name. So I'm going to build this solution real quick just to make sure I haven't gotten any errors. Doesn't look like I've done that, so I'm doing pretty good. Okay, so how do we use this object and work with this property? So let's go back to our program.cs here, And let's add some more code. Okay, so what we want to do now in our program.cs is let's go ahead and ask the user like console.writeLine or write what is your name? Okay, so we're going to get input from the user again, and well, we need to hold the name up here. Let's create a variable to hold the name, so string name. Okay, so we're going to say name is equal to console dot read line. There we go. And so that grabs whatever the user types in at that point. So now we're going to access our student object, and I'm going to say student, and we'll just call it my student is equal to new student. Okay, and so remember in this student object we can do something like this. So my student dot, and you see that name property right there? See that little wrench? We can take that name property and we can write to it the value that we've gotten from the user input for this name variable right here. Okay, so we're at this point we are going to access the set by writing to the class the value the user typed in. And then so what else can we do that? Well, we can then read that out. So we're going to say console dot write line, and I can say something like your name is, and then what I can do is I can access that my student object, and I can access that name property, and I can do something cool and say like and your personality, because we already have that other object in memory, the person object. So your personality type is my student. Now look at this, I'm accessing my student, and when I do that, because of the inheritance, I can actually get the personality. So I'm accessing the my student because my student inherits the person. Go back there. There we go. We got it in the semicolon. Since my student right here, if you come back here, the student right here inherits the person, I'm able to call upon any method from the person object. In this case, I had a method called getPersonality. So that's pretty cool. Now we know that the getPersonality, the default is we said that the constructor for the personality is mystery. Okay, so let's see how this works. So let's build it, make sure we don't have any errors, and let's see how this works. Okay, no errors, so let's run it. So it's going to ask me type 1 if you like to talk to others, type 2 if you'd rather be by yourself, so I'm just going to type 2. It says what's your name, I'm going to say Clinton, and then says your name is Clinton and your personality is mystery. So we've been able to access the child object from the student and grab the student name here, and we've been able from that because it's inherited from the person class, we've been able to access the parent and grab the default from the default constructor and print mystery. So this is an example of just of the basics of inheritance and how you can create objects with inheritance, you can create simple methods from an object, and then you can go to the extent of the get and set accessors and build a property for an object.